Hey, Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad at all, buddy. So we have another video today.
We do. We have some Second Amendment stuff out of the great Garden State of New Jersey, and ColionNoir is going to discuss with us what it means, the judge who did it, and why it was done. So, let this man cook. Here we go.
New Jersey's assault weapons ban is dead. The AR ban, the feature restrictions, the 10-round magazine limit, a federal appeals court just wiped all of it off the board. But the part that stopped me isn't the headline. It's the name signed at the bottom of that opinion. Watch this, and then I'll show you who wrote it.
The U.S. Appeals Court has ruled New Jersey's ban on assault rifles is unconstitutional.
Alan Devlin joins us in studio now with reaction to this decision. Alan?
And a lot of new developments here in the last couple of hours since that decision was made. This is the first time a federal appeals court has ruled that a state's assault weapons ban violated the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment. New Jersey has long had some of the strictest gun laws in the country, including weapons bans and magazine capacity restrictions. With some of these restrictions being in place since 1990, gun rights advocates have long since argued the bans are unconstitutional.
The Second Amendment states that our gun rights will not be infringed, and an armed society is a safe society. These concepts from the framers of the Constitution were such that we had just gotten out of an 8-year-long war, and to keep the peace in our country and to keep our country safe, we should be an armed people, right? So they have arbitrary amounts of bullets in magazines. Like, it's normally 10. You can have no more than 10 rounds, which
I always found that a very strange law. Very, very strange.
Well, it's a very strange number.
Yeah. Why not make it 12 or 8 or 9? It just seems to be a random number, yeah.
It's very random. So what they continue to do is cite safety issues. Well, it is unsafe. It is unsafe to have more than 10 rounds. That makes no sense, right? And armed people who are going to fight against tyranny should have the same weapons base that those who will commit the tyranny are going to use against them. It's the function of it, right? The Second Amendment isn't for hunting. It's not for sport shooting. It is to defend the people from the tyranny of an unjust government. That is the purpose of it. And and if a right is not to be infringed, then that means you don't mess with it. So it's consistently coming up as a safety issue. FBI statistics cite all kinds of firearms that are used and this, that, and the other thing, but the lion's share of violence committed for the FBI statistics is that of suicide, the greater portion. And most of the violence that's committed is committed with pistols, not rifles. So scary assault rifle, which is really an undetermined term, because the term assault in legalese is a credible threat. All firearms present a credible threat, which means necessarily then all firearms are an assault weapon, right? Just based on how the language works. But when they go to the safety side of the house, what they're saying is we're going to keep you safe. Don't keep me safe. I don't want you keeping me safe. I want a well-armed society that will fight against tyranny should it come to my doorstep, my community, my town, right?
Right, okay. No, but when I was over in California and we were at the range, I found most of the gun owners were very responsible. You know, they had the proper cases. There was no one doing wild, crazy stuff with their firearms. They respected them. That's the way I found it, anyway.
Anywhere that I have gone, right? Anywhere that I have gone, people are absolutely respectful of the firearms. And those are legal gun-owning American citizens who are super responsible. When you put these restrictions in place, you make it more difficult for the populace to defend themselves, just overall. So it seems unfunctional to me. And there's a lot of really good information about the judge who did this and why people were shocked when it happened. So a little foreshadowing for you there.
Appeals court ruled in a 10-5 vote to strike down the assault weapons and capacity ban, a decision being cheered by some and jeered by others. John Comerford with the National Rifle Association Legislative Board said this ruling protects the rights of millions of responsible gun owners in the Garden State and serves as another benchmark in our efforts to dismantle gun control across the country. On the other side, New Jersey Attorney General Jennifer Davenport said today's decision is as unfortunate as it is legally incorrect. We remain committed to working with our law enforcement partners to enforce our other firearms and laws treating gun violence like the public health crisis that it is.
So it's not a public health crisis. In no way is it a public health crisis. And it is legally correct because the the rights of gun owners are being infringed. Cars cause more death and destruction on American citizens and those who are visiting our country than firearms ever could or ever would, based on a responsible gun owning community, which is functionally those who are in communities who are acting responsibly, not those who are illegally getting firearms and using them for illicit purposes. So when you infringe on that right, it is legally correct to say, do not restrict the firearms.
No, I was just reading a case there, funny enough, from my own country there recently. A farmer defended his own property up in County Offaly from 5 individuals who were armed from breaking into his house. So, yeah, guns are very important, especially in rural areas, to keep yourself safe, I think.
Well, even in cities, anywhere you go, you should have the right to defend yourself. It is a natural right as a conscious human being, have the ability to defend oneself.
Yes.
And that doesn't change because you say it's unsafe. Well, it's unsafe for a bunch of people to come in my house with firearms and dictate to me what I'm going to do, either by killing me or just stealing all my things at gunpoint.
So reaction from both sides continues to pour in. We'll have much more coming up on this on CBS News New York this evening. Ladies?
Thank you, Alan.
Start with the name, Arianna Freeman. She was one of 2 appointees of former Democrat President Joe Biden in the majority, which otherwise was composed of Republican-appointed judges. A Biden appointee, a career public defender out of Philadelphia, the first Black woman ever to sit on the Third Circuit, a name that got floated for the Supreme Court when Breyer retired. If you're the gun control lobby, that's the judge you assume is already in your corner. She looked at New Jersey's ban, held it up against the Constitution, and said no. And no was total. The appeals court by a 10-5 vote went even further, declaring the ban on all types of semi-automatic rifles and not just AR-15s violates the Second Amendment, as does the large capacity magazine ban.
The other thing with this is it's creating a split now. So the 3rd district out of New Jersey is now split with the 9th district out of the West Coast, California, Oregon, and the like, Washington State.
Right.
So this is the kind of thing that is going to end up going in front of the Supreme Court. What could happen is the 3rd district could again go on bonk and try and reiterate this thing and try and get it changed. But at 10-5, there's no way. There's no way, right? So that means that when this split comes down, because there's going to be gun laws, Heller, Bruen, Ocean, that are going to be brought up along with this case as precedent out of the 3rd district in the 9th district in California, and it's going to get really ugly. Really ugly, really fast. So this is going to go certiorari probably up to the Supreme Court pretty quick here. So to get to the Supreme Court, there has to be functionally a district split, like say between the 3rd and the 9th here, and you file a writ of certiorari, which is going to go to the Supreme Court as a request to hear it. And less than 2% of all cases that get submitted to through certiorari, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, get heard at all anyway. And right. So each one of the Supreme Court justices has a district that files up to them, right? So Ketanji Brown Jackson, Chief Justice Roberts, Alito, like they all have a district court that they send that certiorari, the writ of certiorari, up to that Supreme Court justice, who then will make a ruling on whether they're going to hear it, which is why Clarence Thomas had some massive issues with things that didn't get up to the Supreme Court because they were killed at the inception of the certiorari to get to the Supreme Court in the first place. And you see this a lot with the Section 230 stuff and Second Amendment stuff. So FCC stuff, free speech stuff, corporate regulation of speech, and then gun control stuff that consistently gets sent up, and certain justices just won't have it. They're like, no. But when you have a massive split between the 9th and the 3rd, where the 3rd says you can't do that with a magazine ban, and you can't restrict the most ubiquitous carbine rifle in the AR-15, you can't do that. It is common use. Like, what are you doing? Why are, and then it just gets slammed on the front.
It is the most common rifle in the United States, isn't it? They are.
Yes, 100%. And it's a really good rifle. I could teach somebody's mom how to get a tight shot group at 50 meters in about 45 minutes, right? For the safety of the home. If somebody comes into your home, and understand, you go to the rifle first for defense. The pistol's like the backup, right? You want the best tool for the job. If there's a bunch of people in my house that have bad intention, I would really rather have an AR than a 9mm. I just rather have that.
They all make a very lasting point towards them.
They do. Yeah. Well, the pointy end of the bullet's definitely going to convince people to get the hell out of my house.
Not just the AR, every semi-automatic rifle. The 10-round magazine limit New Jersey's been enforcing for years, gone too. And the court kicked it back down to weigh the same ban on pistols and shotguns. That's the whole wall coming down. Now, line this up with how she almost didn't get on the bench. When Biden nominated her, the Senate rejected her the first time. The first judicial pick of his they ever voted down. They only got her through on a do-over. So the same crowd that fought to keep her off this bench just watched her hand down one of the biggest Second Amendment wins in years. You can't script that. Now here's the part that actually matters, because the reasoning is the whole ball game. This all traces back to Bruen, the 2022 Supreme Court case that reset how you're allowed to judge a gun law. Modern gun restrictions must be consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. That's the test now. A state doesn't get to just say a law makes people safer and call it a day. It has to prove the law fits a historical tradition that going back to the founding, we actually regulated arms this way. New Jersey couldn't do it because there's no history in this country of banning an entire class of weapon that millions of law-abiding people own and use every day. And that's exactly where Freeman planted her flag. And I quote, "Bans on broad prohibitions on possessing or carrying of a class of weapon in common use for lawful purposes fail to find support in our nation's tradition of firearm regulation."
The one that they cite most often is the storing of gunpowder in the late 1700s and early 1800s. And that was a safety issue. You can't have that much gunpowder in one place because right, you don't do that. Boom. Right, it goes boom. But now that we have rimfire and centerfire bullets that are encased with the round itself, that concern isn't really a concern, right? So you can store lots of bullets in a very safe fashion. I would suggest in a safe or whatever your regulation is for your area, how you would store it, but then also make sure that the weather doesn't affect them. But it isn't like loose gunpowder. It's not the 1800s. It's just not. And we can safely store them. And for you to say, I can't have more than 10 rounds, again, is very strange because it has nothing to do with our nation's tradition of firearm regulation. In fact, when the founders put the Second Amendment in, they knew about Ferguson rifles and automatic weapons and didn't choose to restrict them at the point at which they said the second thing they said, which was after free speech and practice of religion, was you should probably have a firearm. In fact, you are, in 1792, they had the Militia Act, which is all y'all, everybody from 16 to 45 will go train to be in the militia to keep your communities and the country safe, right? So the tradition is everybody has a firearm. That's the tradition. And it was actually expected and then mandated in law in 1792 for the protection of the states through regimented infantry units that served the states and were trained within the state and those communities, so that if we had to field a military, an army, we could field a military. No question. You learn about firearms. When I went to high school, you could go out in the parking lot and find shotguns and gun racks in the back of a ton of trucks because after school, kids were going hunting. That's what you did, right? And then when all these safety laws come into effect because somebody's trying to keep me safe, that just seems like an awkward feminization of society in total, because it gives those who
it reminds me of those things. Think of the children kind of ads. You know, we're doing this to keep the kids safe. You know, that kind of way.
Maybe if you teach the kids how to safely discharge firearms,
it's just I don't know. When they cite kind of safety laws, you're just going, we know not to run around with scissors. You know,
it's
just like.
Well, and then there's a natural selection process for those who run around with scissors, right? They tend to make the error that disallows the breeding from happening, and you're like, oh, well, that's good. That's good. Don't want you in the gene pool anyway.
Natural selection.
Well, naturally with some scissors.
Weapons in common use for lawful purposes. That's the phrase the whole ruling turns on. The AR-15 is the most owned rifle in the country. Millions of them in millions of homes owned by people who will live their entire lives without ever hurting a soul. You cannot call the single most popular rifle in America dangerous and unusual and ban it. The word unusual stops meaning anything when you're talking about the thing everybody has. And
it is the most ubiquitous rifle in the country. This is not strange, dangerous, like all these little keywords they use to indicate that they're real unhappy with how that thing looks, right? And also the term assault weapon tends to fall on its ear as well, because they're not, because it's an undefined term. What the term actually means is that's a scary black rifle and I don't like it because scary. No, not cool. Not acceptable. That is
Well,
not the way that should go.
there's millions of them in the United States in circulation.
Oh, for sure. And there are more firearms in this country than there are people. It's just the way that it is. That nobody really wants to invade us because you're just not going to have a good time. It's not going to go well for you.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest issue we have is the chance that there is an authoritarian, tyrannical government that's going to attempt to impose its will. Therefore, you should have the firearms anyway.
Yeah, I see that kind of boogeyman, all right. But still, it's in your constitution. You have the right to own them, so you should own them. But that's it.
Right. Well, and the other one is the FFL situation with, well, that's a federal firearms thing, but the problem comes with, even with the automatic weapons. Automatic weapons are not necessarily frowned on. You need to have a federal firearms license to do anything with them, but the problem is a tax stamp. What they said is you can buy this firearm in the 1800s or whatever that's automatic in nature, but you have to get a tax stamp from the federal government. So they just didn't issue the tax stamp, so you couldn't get the firearm. It was gun regulation done early, and really it's just in your face. Do you want to buy that? Here, okay, send in for your tax stamp. We didn't grant it. Why not? Well, because we just didn't want to. Well, you don't get to do that. Like, you're infringing on my right to possess the firearm.
Yes. Wow.
Well, we'll get Doubting Thomas on to discuss this, and he'll go ad nauseum for quite a while.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. He gets really in the weeds with it, all right.
Oh, he cuts loose. And that's why he's not here right now, or this video would be 4 hours long. So,
or longer.
It could be longer. He won't stop. He will tell you all about all the things. And it's actually, he's got one incredible knowledge base when it comes to firearms and all that stuff.
Oh, he does. I will say that much on him. He has fantastic knowledge base. But he does a lot of research.
He will in fact wax poetic. Here we go.
And then she shuts the door on the only argument New Jersey had left. That is, so even when the regulations are passed with the intention of reducing gun violence, that's the kicker. Good intentions don't save the law. You can want to reduce gun violence. Everybody in America wants that. But wanting it doesn't hand you the power to erase a constitutional right to get there. That's a judge reading the law for what it says instead of what her team wants it to say. And when it's a Biden-appointed former public defender saying it, nobody gets to wave it off as partisan. That's what makes this bulletproof. And people are already having fun with it. Somebody turned her into a meme, basically the patron saint of the Second Amendment, which is hilarious when you consider what side of the aisle she probably sits on and who put her on that bench. But that's the whole point. Nobody's clapping because she's on the team. They're clapping because she looked past it. I don't care what letter's next to your name. You rule on the law over politics, you get flowers from me. And that right there, a judge who leans one way, reads a law that shreds the Constitution and calls it anyway, that's America in the pure sense. For years, you've been told the foundation's crumbling, that it's all rigged by party, that shall not be infringed is negotiable now. And I get why you'd believe it. You've watched it happen. Today, one judge reminded everybody the foundation's still standing. That's what this hat that I'm wearing right now has always been about.
To start pimping products. I like it. But he's correct. This is not a party line thing. This is your right shall not be infringed. And with Heller and Bruen, with those tests, like how did it work at the framing of the Constitution? What was the purpose of it? And is it the law? Does it apply to how it applied then? It doesn't.
No. And the way I see it is, if it's in your Constitution, just don't go messing around with it. Because I'm not from the United States, obviously, but even I could tell them, yeah, that law was not going to hold up for more than 5 minutes.
Well, the 9th District and the 3rd District, and a lot of these other district courts, those states within those jurisdictions will pass these laws knowing that it's going to be adjudicated, right? There's going to be litigious behavior, but while that's going on, like, you can't get temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions. They just won't do it because those courts are fairly partisan. And that is unhealthy in our system. When it is challenged, you should hold off on that. You shouldn't say, nope. We're going to go ahead and institute these laws that we know are unconstitutional, right? Rob Bonta knows it's unconstitutional in the state of California when he allows these laws to go through. He doesn't just stuff them immediately, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, any law that is in direct excuse me, I'm getting emotional. Any law that is in direct confrontation with the Constitution should be considered void. And that has to do with how the 10th Amendment functions. Those states are not allowed to do that because they are immediately void for being in direct contravention to the Constitution. The first one shouldn't have sat, but now that more of them have gone through, now it's about safety, and it doesn't seem to function on the other end. Why am I today not a felon, but you pass a law and I am a felon?
Yeah, that shouldn't work that way. You're right. So that,
America 2A.
yeah, we keep
Go ahead.
we keep forgetting that America is a two-party system. When you have only just two parties, you're going to get an awful lot of this bias from both sides of the aisle. And you get silly laws like this, obviously, from a Democratic judge and so on. But I've always said it, America definitely needs a third party to balance the scales a small bit.
Well, what happens is you have two platforms and you have to pick all of A or all of B.
Yes.
And that doesn't work because as an independent thinker who can critically work through processes, you should be able to decide for yourselves. Well, I like all of these few things in column A. I like some of column B. Both of them seem to be against a thing that is constitutional. It's very strange.
In for the I in America, because the Second Amendment is a load-bearing letter in the whole word. Put it on, and you're saying the foundation is real. It's worth standing on. And today, you've got the receipts. So I'm gonna put a link in the description section of this video so you can grab yourself an America 2A hat. We also have it in black too. Here's why this jumps way past New Jersey. It's the first time a federal appeals court has ever called a state's assault weapon ban a Second Amendment violation. First time it's ever happened, and the timing could not be worse for the other side. That issue was already in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, which agreed last month to review rulings that had upheld similar bans adopted in Cook County, Illinois, and Connecticut against powerful semi-automatic rifles. So, the Supreme Court already agreed to take up this exact question. Assault weapons ban used in cases out of Illinois and Connecticut where the lower courts upheld the bans. Now the Third Circuit walks in and strikes one down. That's a circuit split. Federal appeals courts openly disagreeing on whether you can ban America's most common rifle. And a split like that is the exact pressure that forces the Supreme Court to step in and settle it for the entire country. Now, factor in who's sitting on that court. A 6-3 conservative majority, the same court that handed down Bruen in the first place. The test that just took New Jersey's ban apart came from the same 9.
Yeah, it's looking really, really good for this being brought up as precedent because an appellate court said absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, and I think that's pretty much gonna close it for this because we're just gonna wrap on him wrapping up too. And I guess buy his hat. We'll put a link in the description. Pretty cool hat.
Yeah, please buy. Yeah, please buy his hats. He really wants you to buy his hats.
He does. I like the one in black a little bit better than the one in white, though.
But I will say he's very, very knowledgeable. Very, very knowledgeable.
Right. And I enjoy his content, too. And I really like how he brought up that circuit court split at the end. And if this goes to the Supreme Court with a 6-3, it's looking pretty good for it to be upheld on constitutional basis. And when those other courts, Cook County and Connecticut and some 9th District stuff out of California, it's looking like the magazine ban's going to go away, and it's looking like the most ubiquitous rifle in the entire United States, owned by millions of Americans, is going to be hands off for everybody. And I think that's just the best way for it to be.
I think it's the easiest way to go forward, actually, in fairness. Just let people buy what they want to buy.
Yeah, well, it's a mercantile function. John Locke and Thomas Hobbes discussed all these things, savage society and the function of government as an effective protecting land and mercantile function. So, all right, anything else for the good of people, Patrick?
No, actually, very, very interesting, actually. As I say, I'm not from the States, but even I could tell you that was going to be struck down.
All right, for Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, help us beat the algorithm. We're the A&P Gents. We are